All right, what's the formula for financial independence? I'm going to break it down exactly what you need to calculate to figure out what financial independence is for you right now. Okay, so let's talk about financial independence. What is financial independence? Because if we're going to try to create a formula, we got to know what it is, right? Now, everybody has their own different definitions. Some people confuse financial freedom with financial independence. I think financial freedom is a much bigger conversation. That one's more about not just having enough money to live on, but it's about having more than enough money to live on, and money is no longer the reason or excuse that you do or do not do anything. But financial independence, in my definition, is more of the Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad definition, which is when your passive income rises to meet whatever your expenses are. So once you hit where you can pay for your expenses with passive income, then you're financially independent. That's why I always say cash flow creates freedom, right? How do you get enough passive income coming in so that you now are work optional? You work in your job or your business because you want to, not because you have to. Now, the formula for that, there's a lot of different theories and things like that out there. I'll tell you, most of it is theories, especially if you listen to traditional financial advisors out there today. I know I was one of them over almost 25 years ago. Being a financial advisor, I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was literally believing in it for myself, being in my mid-20s, thinking like I knew everything, right? And I knew all about money. And so I was going to show people, here's how you can be financially free in your next 40 years, right? In freaking 2000, the mid-2000s, That sounds like a long ways away when I say it that way. But it's true. It's always out there, then you'll be financially free. And so I would tell them, just set it and forget it, right? Save as much as you can, spend as little as you can, save it forever, let it compound interest because it's the eighth wonder of the world, BS. And start to do that, and then eventually you'll pull off just enough income to not die, right? That's really what I was trying to tell people to be financial independence in 30, 40 years from now. However, when it came to that reality for myself, I remember sitting down with my dad. My dad asked me to be his financial advisor after I was a financial advisor for 4 years. So I sat down with him, sat at the same kitchen table. He told me to be cheap, save everything, because my dad was the penny pinching little saver. And so I was doing the same thing for myself. I believed in the same thing. I thought if I just save up $2 million in mutual funds, I can then live on $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year, that 3% rule, right? So I was trying to do the same thing for myself. But then I looked at my future by looking at my dad's situation, because my dad had done the same thing for decades. Lived cheap, was debt-free, including his house, saved all his money in his 401k, he got the match. He did everything by the book. And then as I sat down and looked at his numbers, I said, Dad, you're 61 years old. If you want to retire today, you're going to have to die in about 5 or 6 years because you're going to run out of money. You'll have nothing left. He's like, okay, well, what do I do? I don't know, Dad. You did everything right from what I teach as a financial advisor. And this bothered me because I realized, it's like, wait a minute, I've been on the same path as him. So it hasn't not just worked for him. Will this even work for me? And by the way, I've been teaching this to all my clients and they've been on the same path. And then when I really looked at it, I was like, man, well, none of my clients are truly financially free where they don't worry about money. They're always worried about money. Even the retired ones worry about living too long and outliving their money. And I realized that was a problem. I was teaching a lie. I was teaching a pipe dream, right? I mean, you talk about people talking about, pyramid schemes and scams and all that kind of stuff. Literally, my financial advising experience showed that what we were teaching, even from financial advisors before me to clients that I then inherited later, it was all a scam. It was really just a scheme that was making the financial advisor more money, but not them. And by the way, when I started looking at other financial advisors and their lives, they couldn't retire either. They didn't have enough money saved up that they could retire. They literally were making money off of you. Whether you made money or not, they were making their commissions off of it regardless, or charging their fees to be able to make money off the advising, even if the advice didn't work. And this is why, literally, and this is stats, right? Every 3 to 5 years, people change financial advisors. They think, well, if I just change the person, I'll get something different. But they all teach the same stupid thing about financial independence, right? They teach you the same thing of you just got to set it and forget it, save it in here, diversify, dollar cost average, all that kind of crap, right? And then eventually you get to that point and you end up like my dad saying, I did it. Why doesn't it work? You should have saved more. I did save more. You told me to save what, and I saved it. It's just not enough. Yeah, so the financial advisor is never wrong. It's always the person, right? It's always you that gets the blame. That is unacceptable, isn't it? All right, so what's that formula? I already mentioned the simple formula is passive income meets your expenses. Now, if you're going to try to use all the stuff the financial advisors say with mutual funds, you got to do this. If you're trying to be financially independent in your 60s, I mentioned the 3% rule. That means you got to save up about 30 times or more whatever you want to live on per year. And by the way, you got to factor in inflation. So every about 10 to 15 years, you got to double that number. So for example, if you want to live on, say, $60,000 a year, times that by 30, and you're going to need about $2 million, right? You're going to need about $2 million to live on 60,000 a year in today's dollars. Now, if that number you think is going to take at least 15 years to get to, double it. Then you're going to have to save $4 million. If you wait 30 years, you're going to have to probably save more than that, 8 or even $10 million you got to have if you're waiting for 30 years to live on a $5,000 a month lifestyle today. Sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't it? And it is. And people say, well, how do we beat that inflation? I mean, that's tough to beat. Here's the best way to beat inflation. Create income now. Do it today. Do it faster. And it's not get rich quick, but it's get rich quicker than never getting rich, which is what financial planning has always done. So the formula I've used is this, is creating passive income. Give you an example. We had a client that she had about $600,000 that she'd saved up. She was in her 50s. But remember, $600,000, if she wants to retire in her 60s, 3% of that, she's living on $18,000 a year. That's $1,500 a month. And then she has to pay taxes on that. So really she walks away with maybe $1,200 a month if she's lucky. So we instead got her doing things with alternative investments, things like real estate, but not just buying the property in her backyard. We started doing different things where some of it was buying rental properties, but a lot of it was actually going in and buying things with oil and gas, doing some things like lending money to real estate investors and whatnot. By the time all was said and done, she now has over $6,500 a month of income coming in. With that $600,000, not $1,200 a month after taxes or $1,500 a month right before, but $6,500, more than quadruple that number. How did we do it? Again, we use alternative investments because we invest our cash flow. Cash flow is what creates freedom. When you have income coming in, it's like this. If you have $100,000 today, again, remember living on 3%. By the way, if you want to retire early before your 60s, it's a 2% rule. So you're living on every 100,000, maybe 2 or 3,000 a year. That's it. But with 100,000, what if I invest it and make 10%? By the way, there are 10% contracts that I can actually get into in real estate where they are by contract supposed to pay me 10%. Well, that's $10,000 a year, not 2, maybe 3,000 if I'm lucky. Also, if you get 1% a month, if it's 12% a year, 1% a month, that means 100,000 makes you $1,000 a month. Not 1,000 at once every half a year, every month, right? That's the difference. By the way, when I learned this, I was actually only 28 years old. It blew my mind this was possible. I was a financial advisor, but when I started to see there's this whole other world of alternative investments, often referred to as Main Street investing, as opposed to Wall Street investing, which is what I was always taught investing was. Main Street investing in businesses and in real estate and things like that have been around for thousands of years. This has been something that's been proven. Wall Street's only a few hundred years old. This is not. And so what happened is I started getting into that. I started to do things. I actually turned my starter home into a rental property. I actually did some things in business that I was able to create streams of income coming in where I was very passive, hands off. And the next thing I know, I had $4,000 or $5,000 a month coming in, even though I didn't have a huge amount of cash. That blew my mind. I didn't even think that was possible. Because remember, I wanted $5,000 a month. I thought as a young 20-something-year-old, I thought I'd have to scrimp and save forever to get at least $2 million to live on $5,000 a month. That is simply just not the case. So the formula depends on where you invest your money. It's all based on numbers, isn't it? But remember, if you're going to be doing the traditional mutual fund financial advisor way, if you're going to try to be financially free in your 60s, you got to multiply it by about 30 or 33 times. If you want to be financially free earlier than your 60s, you got to multiply it by 50 times. If you want $100,000 a year, you got to have $5 million saved up today. In today's dollars, $5 million saved up. This is why I had a guy coming to me. He's like, Chris, I have $3 million in my accounts right now. I'm 52 years old, $3 million sitting in those accounts, and I'm saving $200,000 a year. This guy is packing away money like crazy. And you know what his financial advisor said? His financial advisor, he said, well, your goal is $500,000 a year of income. To do that, as long as the market doesn't go down in the next 13 years, which good luck on that one. We've already had 16 years and only 1 year was down, when normally it's 2 years up, 1 year down is the average. We got something coming up ahead. He's like, well, if the market does just right, you should be able to make it in 13 years where you'll have $18 million and you can live off that. And 3% of 18 million, as you know, is just over $500,000 a year. He was factoring like almost nothing inflation, by the way. And so I told him, I said, well, you could do that, but you're probably gonna have to save another couple years beyond that, even if you're packing away that $200,000 a year. I said, or do this. What if your $3 million got invested today earns 10% a year? You're making $300,000 a year. Combine that with your $200,000 you're saving already. By the next year, you have $300,000, but you'll have another $500,000 to add to it. $500,000 making 10% is $50,000 a year. You go from $300,000 to $350,000 a year. Well, guess what? Now you take the $350 plus $200, you got $550 the next year. That bumps you up another $55,000 a year. So now you're at $405,000 a year. His goal is $500,000 a year. I said, guess what? Within about 4 years, you'll be there. Rather than hoping and praying in 13 to 15 years, you'll be there relying on your financial advisor. That is the difference. So again, financial freedom is so much easier. Financial independence is so much easier and so much more formulaic when you know it's not just investing for compounding interest like they try to brainwash you to believe. It's about compounding income, just like that guy could do. Compounding the income to keep building and growing your cash flow and income each and every year. And the cool thing is, even if little hiccups happen along the way, what if he got laid off in the meantime? He can't keep saving. The good news is this: he still had over 300 grand a year coming in to cover his bills and then some. By the way, he didn't need 500 grand a year. He just wanted more than enough to be free. I said, dude, you could be doing this in your mid-50s, not in your mid-60s. So much faster, so much sooner doing it this way. That is the key. That's the formula for creating financial independence now. Now, if you want to figure out how to do it in your own life, here's what you do. Go to moneyripples.com. There's a passive income calculator. Click on that, fill it out. It will accurately spit out what you could be creating in the next 12 months. This is literally the formula that we've been using for myself and for many of our clients to get real financial freedom today. You can do that right now at moneyripples.com.